going out tonight. This is from Hal Turner, and I also got the information from Pravda, Russian newspaper, that Russia has put out their entire nuclear submarine fleet. This was an emergency deployment, and we're going to read you the article. This is one of the submarines. This has just happened in the last few hours. Let me go ahead to the Pravda article. Now, this is Pravda. This is coming from Russian. This is a Russian news source right here. Mission-ready nuclear submarines of the Russian Pacific Navy urgently leave the port. And this is dated 11/26/2021. So this article is just from a few hours ago. Russian nuclear submarines based in Villushkansk were urgently sent to sea, the Ava Pro website reports. Villushkansk is a closed town in Russia's Kamchatka, I can't pronounce these names, folks, sorry, region on the peninsula. So this was in response to the United States and NATO threatening Russia yesterday. So let me go ahead and read you a little bit more. This is one of the nuclear submarines. According to the military maps, against the backdrop of rising tensions between Russia and NATO, all nuclear submarines, listen to this, all the nuclear submarines of the Pacific Fleet of the Russian Navy is in a state of combat readiness, left their places of deployment and went on alert duty. Now, this is an emergency deployment. That means that all the Russian submarines, folks, they put them out to sea. And they would not do this unless they're worried about an attack coming against the Russian Federation. The situation was observed at several Russian bases. Satellite images of the naval base in Villushkansk. I can't pronounce these names, folks. Here's the names. You'll have to pronounce them yourself. Peninsula confirmed that the Russian nuclear submarines have left their base in turn within several days. The latest photographic evidence received from the Sentinel-2 spacecraft was made on November the 23rd, 2021. This is the 26th. According to GPS tracking systems, the Russian nuclear submarines of Project 955 Boreal class, 955A Boreal A, and a 949A Anti started leaving their permanent bases starting as early as the beginning of November. Neither the Russian ministry nor the Russian Navy has released any official comments on the details of such a massive maneuver conducted by Russian nuclear submarines at sea. So this is breaking news coming in today, that all of the nuclear submarines in the Russian Pacific Fleet have been sent out to sea. So this is a breaking emergency news alert, folks. And let me read you just a little bit about what happened. United States threatened Russia the other day. This is from Reuters News. The U.S. says all options are on the table over Russian troop buildup near Ukraine. So it says all options are on the table of how to respond to a Russian's large and unusual troop buildup near Ukraine's border. And the NATO alliance will decide what the next move will be following consultations next week. The State Department top U.S. diplomat for European Affairs said on Friday. So we're going to do a complete update tomorrow on this, folks. I can only do a short update now, but this is the breaking news that this is from Pravda, which is one of Russia's news publications online. Mission-ready nuclear submarines of the Russian Pacific Navy urgently leave port. So this is very dramatic, folks. We could be in a war very soon with Russia, folks, and if we do go to war with Russia, it will go nuclear very fast. I think it will. So anyway, just wanted to bring you this breaking news. I'm going to go ahead and upload this video soon. Russian submarine with 160 nukes on board surfaces off the U.S. coast. Russian nuclear submarine of the Boreal project, which carries 16 Bulava ballistic missiles on board, unexpectedly appeared off the coast of the United States, having caused serious concerns in Washington. Each of these missiles in service with the submarine is capable of carrying up to 10 nuclear warheads. This created an extremely serious danger for the United States, given that the U.S. military has been not able to track the Russian nuclear submarine. According to NetEase publications, Russian nuclear submarine of the Boreal class, according to other sources, it was an Akula project submarine, approached the United States coastline unnoticed. It was possible to establish the whereabouts of the nuclear submarine with up to 160 nuclear warheads on board after the sub started going back to the base. A submarine of this class is capable of destroying most of the territory of the United States of America in just minutes. So one Russian sub, folks, can pretty much decimate our whole country with nuclear missiles. So this is what has been happening in the last 12 hours. Russia redeploys military hardware and personnel to the western border. Russia may increase the strength of its army on the western border to up to 500,000 soldiers. So Russia's not messing around, folks. Russia is going all in. They're not messing around. They're putting everything in but the kitchen sink right now. For the time being, Russia has deployed as many as 100,000 troops and thousands of units of military hardware on the border with Ukraine. Many videos showing the transportation of military equipment from the eastern part of Russia toward the western borders have appeared on the internet recently. It appears that Russia is putting its troops on high alert against the background of a very high risk of provocations on the part of NATO. Given the scale of the transfer of military hardware, it appears that Russia is taking efforts to build up the troops on its western border to 500,000. Most of the Russian troops will thus be deployed in the western regions of the media is saying about what is happening. NATO is nervous over Russian diesel submarine that disappeared 7 days ago. A Russian submarine has been circling around an aircraft carrier strike group of the U.S. Navy for 7 days already. So Russia has already put its subs in place to sink our aircraft carrier strike groups, just in case, folks, these talks do not bear fruit. And NATO cannot find this submarine, folks. This is one of Russia's most advanced black hole submarines. That means they cannot locate it. It is so quiet, and they cannot locate it with sonar. So let me go ahead and read you this. NATO nervous over Russia's diesel submarine that disappeared 7 days ago. A Russian submarine has been circling around an aircraft carrier strike group for the U.S. Navy for 7 days. So we can't find their submarines, folks, so this submarine could sink our aircraft carrier strike group within a matter of minutes. Pentagon and NATO appeared nervous after the Russian submarine, which was last detected between Malta and Sicily, did not appear off the coast of Syria. Moreover, the Russian submarine did not pass either the Bosphorus or the Suez Canal and thus remained in the location of the U.S. aircraft carrier strike group. A few hours ago, a U.S. Boeing P-8 Poseidon anti-submarine patrol aircraft went on a long mission to detect the Russian diesel submarine in the central Mediterranean Sea. According to the website, which refers its own sources, the U.S. aircraft was searching for the submarine, which allegedly posed a threat to the aircraft carrier strike group of the U.S. Navy located in the area, which is the Mediterranean. Several other military aircraft of this type went on missions over the eastern Mediterranean, apparently trying to find the Russian submarine in this area, since the submarine disappeared without a trace and its current whereabouts was unknown. Interestingly, a Tupolev Tu-154 aircraft of the Russian Federation Security Bureau, FSB, was also sighted in the same region. The purpose of the flight remains unknown. However, the flight of the Tu-154 aircraft could be associated with the search for the missing submarine. So I don't know if the submarine had an accident, it sunk to the bottom, no one knows, or if Russia is just trying to get a bead, a heads up, just in case these peace talks go south. This is also from Pravda News. The world
The Russian submarine remains hidden from NATO radars for the 5th day. For the 5th day, the Russian submarine Novorossiysk has been stirring up NATO ships and anti-submarine aircraft in the waters. It was assumed that the Russian submarine was nevertheless found with the help of radio beacons. However, judging by the data of open resources and foreign media, the submarine armed with cruise missiles was still able to deceive the sonar systems of the NATO military. It is known that the entire eastern part of the Mediterranean Sea, and it is assumed that the Russian submarine should already be in this area, was monitored by NATO ships and anti-submarine aircraft. According to user Manu Gomez, 3 NATO P-8A Poseidon anti-submarine aircraft with numbers AE-6898, AE-5854 and AE-6793, respectively, were operating in the sky over the eastern Mediterranean Sea. In the images presented, you can see the routes of flights of NATO anti-submarine aircraft. The flights were carried out at a relatively low altitude and affected mainly the waters of the Mediterranean Sea, located between Cyprus, Lebanon, and Syria. Among other things, the data on this subject are also confirmed by foreign media. The Russian submarine Kilo has imperceptibly approached a distance that can attack a group of U.S. aircraft carriers off the coast of Italy without the knowledge of the enemy. The Russian submarine Kilo has the potential to defeat the entire U.S. carrier fleet. Recently, a similar situation emerged off the coast of Vietnam. It is known that the Russian non-nuclear submarine Kilo discreetly approached a group of U.S. aircraft carriers at an ideal distance for an attack. The offshore area that has just occurred is between Malta and Sicily. It is worth noting that the grouping of American nuclear carriers was not aware of the appearance of the Russian submarine Kilo. The aircraft carrier Harry Truman is accompanied by destroyers, cruisers, supply ships, and even nuclear submarines. This is enormous strength and power. However, somehow the U.S. carrier group did not detect the presence of the Russian submarine Kilo. It was only after suspicions were discovered that a new submarine hunting reconnaissance aircraft flew into the area, but the Russian submarine Kilo disappeared without a trace. Said in the material of the publication Soku.
An update on the Russian. Before we go, now Russia has a doomsday torpedo called the Poseidon torpedo, and they can detonate this torpedo off of the west coast of the United States and the Gulf of Mexico and the east part of the United States. Now, this doomsday torpedo has a 100 megaton warhead on the front. It is a nuclear bomb that is exploded off the coast, designed as a doomsday weapon to create a 500-foot tsunami that will inundate the United States on the west coast, the Gulf of Mexico, and the east coast. This is their doomsday weapon. They have just put this submarine out to sea months ago. They are actually building 2 submarines that can handle these Poseidon torpedoes. It is Russia's doomsday weapon in case they are attacked by NATO, by the United States. This is their doomsday weapon. When all else fails, they will launch these torpedoes and detonate them off of our coast for a final blow in a nuclear war. So this is another reason to move away from the coastline. You know, 80% of the world, folks, lives along the coastlines of the world. 80% of the people in the entire world, they live along the coastlines. They don't live in the interior of the countries. They live along the coastlines. The same thing with North America, all along Oregon, Washington, California, and along the East Coast, Florida, all the way up to Newfoundland here, Nova Scotia. That is where the majority of people live in the United States. There's a few that live in the center, but most of the population of the United States, or a very large percentage, live along the coastline. So hopefully this is a wake-up call. Go ahead and make your move. Time is running out to get in a safe area, if there is a safe area. But
welcome to the Prophecy Club, where we study and research Bible prophecy. The topic tonight is, I saw submarines attack America. And our speaker is uniquely qualified to do this because God has shown him what is coming for America. Who is he? Why has he earned the right to talk on such a subject? Well, he's been in the ministry for some 38 years, and he walks and prays cities. He's walked and prayed over 200 foreign cities alone. What do we mean, walking and praying a city? He gets a map, at God's direction and systematically walks up and down every street in that city, praying out loud, praying in the Spirit, pulling down strongholds, loosing the angels to do warfare. Then he goes up at God's direction on the highest point overlooking that city where he lifts his hands and he proclaims that land reclaimed to God. Many times revival breaks out. He's had guns at his head, knives at his throat, and God has delivered him from them all. One day, while walking a city, as you'll hear tonight, December 14th, 1986, he was lifted above the earth, and he looked down on it like a globe. And God showed him a vision of submarines launching nuclear weapons and landing here in our beloved America. God does not hate America. He loves America, and he loves Americans, and he loves the Christians here, and he wants to save them. But we have sinned, and we have turned from our God, and he is going to correct us and bring us back to him, and that's what you're going to hear tonight. Will you help me welcome Henry Gruver?
Thank you, Sam. The Lord is good, and his mercies endure forever. I want to begin with those words because I want you to remember them through this entire time. Because if you don't, it will be very difficult for you to keep that focus. In Psalms 85, it says, mercy and truth are met together. I believe in a God of mercy. I believe in the power of the truth that sets free. I believe that anything that makes a lie, God will deal with. And throughout this presentation, you're going to find out I believe that God watches over his word to perform every word of it, to the dotting of the I and the crossing of the T. My life was not one that was designed by my thinking to be anything in the realm of prophecy. My father was a prophecy student. I grew up cutting my teeth with prophecy teachers. I come to know at a very young age, through my father's instruction with us boys and one sister, that prophecy is very important. Dad always said to us, the trouble's going to come because of the Middle East. Well, that's scriptural. And the prophecy teachers of many years have been teaching this. But I'll have to confess to you that by the time I was 17 years old, I'd had about this much of prophecy, and I didn't want any more. And I decided my life would not be in the realms of that at all. And so therefore I decided that my life would be that of evangelism if it was going to be ministry at all. And so I thrust myself into evangelism, began at the age of 17 walking cities and evangelizing, and God began to build a discipline of his spirit in my life. I began to hear his voice and understand well what he was saying to me and his instructions, and I can truly say to you at this very moment, the only reason I'm standing here is because I listened to my Father in heaven's instructions. I learned his voice. And Jesus said in his word and his very own words, my sheep know my voice, and another's will they not hear. And that's very important. You will hear me make statements in this presentation that I will say, thus saith the Lord. You will hear me make statements that I will say, I speak as a man. Please take them in their context. I'm a person that is very cautious about saying, thus saith the Lord. You will also find that I am not a person that gives dates. So if you are going to shut it off and say, I don't want to see this because here's another one of these people that's doing this, you can leave it on. I don't give dates. But I do give the signs of the seasons. And that's very important because I believe Jesus used that facet to teach and to emphasize the seasons. How did he say that? He said, what is it? He said, you see the leaves on the fig tree, you know that summer is near. You see the south wind, you feel the south wind blowing in, and you know it's going to get hot. What is the matter? You can discern these things, but you can't discern the signs of the times. And so I believe with all my heart that God wants us to discern the signs of the times. And the signs will lead you to the time. And you will not be caught without being prepared. And that's the key. And the whole motive, I believe, of God pulling me off of the evangelistic field. And we'll go into portions of that tonight. But the whole motive of going into this and God pulling me off of this realm of ministry was to warn America of what's coming. What I'm going to give you is not gloom and doom. There are three realms that God deals in. And so often I hear people say to me, well, Henry, God has not appointed the Christians to wrath. I totally agree with you. Please don't think I am insinuating in any way in any of the materials of what I give you that this is the wrath of God. This is the beginning of the pleadings of God with the United States of America. He has a controversy with us, and he will begin with pleadings. So we have the pleadings of God, and then we have the judgment of God, and finally the wrath of God follows. I believe God's people, the saints, are subjected to the pleadings of God and to the judgments of God. But I do not believe that they are in any way predestined to be subjected to the wrath of God. So please understand that right up front. I believe that with all of my heart. December the 14th, 1986, I got up at 4:30 in the morning to pray before I would begin walking the city of Carnarvon, northern Wales. I knelt down by my bed, and the Lord spoke words to me that I didn't want to hear. He said, "Are you willing to lay your wife and your family on the altar and never see them again this side of heaven?" He asked me that the afternoon before. I couldn't answer him. And that morning at 4:30 in the morning, when I got up and got on my knees, he said, "I want your answer before you leave the room this day." I jumped to my feet. The tears were streaming down my face. I began walking back and forth in the room, saying, "Lord, I am afraid. I am afraid if you take my family, I will be offended at you. And I don't want to be offended, for your word says, blessed are those that are not offended in me." But I felt that that would be a great sacrifice, and I didn't think my personal being was up to that kind of a request. But as God, I buried my face in my pillow and cried out loud because I didn't want to wake up the people in the rooms around me. God began to bring before me all the years with our children, 13 children. The different circumstances. We had 6 of them at home. Natural childbirth. Yes, we had just about every complication you could name, including one born dead. And I'll say to you that just in less than a month, he'll be graduating with his degree in design engineering. So he's very much alive today, only because of Jesus and his goodness. But Jesus took these kind of things and put them before my eyes, just like you're looking at this television screen. A vision is just like looking at a picture in front of you. Only difference is you're sitting there in your living room or wherever, you can put your hands over your face or stop your eyes from seeing it. But a vision, you can even slap your face and the vision goes on. That's called a day vision. A night vision is when you have a dream. But the difference between it being just, as some people say, too much pizza or something like that, the difference is that when you have a vision from God, detail stays with you. Though it was December the 14th, 1986, every time I ever tell this vision, it comes before me as though it's happening all over again. It is no difficulty to repeat it precisely because I'm seeing it all over again. That's a vision from God. If you have a dream from God, detail stays with you. If you have great difficulty remembering the dream, leave it alone. There is a man, a king, that had difficulty understanding the dream, but I assure you it was from God, and he remembered every detail, didn't he? And when Daniel came before him, he gave him the detail, and that king knew there was no form whatsoever of counterfeit operation going on. This young man knew what dream he had because it was a dream given from God. So I want to go in and begin giving you visions. Try and remember these visions. Note them in your mind. I'll call off certain aspects of the visions because I believe they're going to be of significance in materials that I will offer to you. In that vision, I was standing and looking out over the Isle of Anglesey in Carnarvon, northern Wales. Standing on the Eagle Tower on the Carnarvon Castle. This is the Carnarvon Castle is where Prince Charles was coronated as Prince of Wales. It's a significant expression and reason I believe that God put me there. There's a lot that can be put into that. But that isn't my particular expertise. We'll leave that with those who feel they have other information on it. However, as I stood there looking out over the Isle of Anglesey from the Eagle Tower, it's the tallest tower of the Carnarvon Castle, all of a sudden, looking out across toward over the Irish Sea, the tip of the Irish Sea into the North Sea, I was caught up into the heavens and looking down on the earth like a globe. And as I looked down on the earth like a globe, I saw a massive military movement coming out of an area up by the Arctic. And I couldn't figure out what this was, what was going on, why a military, Navy, and Air Force, why it would be going out between the United States and Europe up above Finland, going out through the Icelandic Gap and heading down between the United States and Europe and making a curl all the way around the Horn of Africa towards the Persian Gulf. Now that's significant. But all of a sudden, I was alarmed because of that. You would have been too. I looked over toward the United States and I saw something I'd never seen in my life. I had never even preconceived the thought of it. I had always thought that the United States was wiser and more powerful than to allow Russian subs to be parked right almost on our beaches per se. What I mean by that is you could see the submarines down under the water, but there were areas that the sand still had drifted on down from the beaches into the depths. And the submarines were sitting there aimed at America. I saw them sprinkled all the way across the East Coast. When I saw that, my family at that time lived in Portland, Oregon. I was alarmed, of course, and I wanted to look over toward Portland to see what was going on. And as I looked across the continent of the United States of this globe, I saw the submarines from way up by Washington, the top of Washington, all the way down around towards San Diego, poised in the same way all the way along our coast from the north, from the Pacific side. Then something else caught my attention. I began to see radio towers going up all across the nation. And these radio towers, as they went up, the dotted lines began going out as though they were transmitting. And then there was an alarm went off in me. They're sounding the alarm. We're going to be under attack. The siege is laid. When all of a sudden I was watching these radio dots going out like the transmitting of a warning, and instead of the people being warned, they sprinkled to the ground like dust. And an alarm went off in me, and I cried out in the heavens, and I said, "Oh God, they won't even know what hit them." And at that time, all of a sudden, I looked down on the eastern seaboard at the submarine was drawn to that one right off from New York City. And I saw the missile come right out of that submarine and go right up and come right over the city of New York, and the entire city disappeared. Then I looked down toward Florida. Down there, I could see another explosion take place. I looked across, because of my family being in the Pacific Northwest, I looked across, another explosion took place up by Seattle, Bellevue. And then another one down by San Francisco. And another one down toward Los Angeles, and another one toward San Diego. And there I stood in shock as I was watching these explosions take place and these cities literally disappearing from off the face of the earth. The next instant, I was standing back down on the Eagle Tower, and I found myself looking down in the village. There was no alarm going off. The cars were going the normal speed. People were walking. I looked out over the bay where there were some British ships, warships, and I watched them and studied them for a few seconds. There was no alarm there. And I found myself saying this: "Oh God, if this has not happened, what will be the sign of it and of its time?" And God spoke to my spirit, and these were the words he said. December the 14th, 1986, before Glasnost, Perestroika, the Berlin Wall was still up. The Cold War was still in full bore run. We supposedly were still on alert. The words were spoken to me: when Russia opens her gates and lets the masses go, the free world will occupy themselves with transporting, housing, and caring for the masses. Will begin letting their weapons down, crying peace and safety. And that's when it will happen. Now, the question